The Florida Gators are entering year two of Billy Ball down in Gainesville. Billy Napier having taken over the program last year, 6-7 with three straight losses. Today on Southeastern 14, we talk about the 2023 season and expectations for the Florida Gators. Hello, everyone. I'm Blayne Gilmer here for Southeastern 14. We cover all things SEC, have been blowing it out on this channel with the basketball coverage with March Madness. You got teams like Arkansas, Tennessee advancing to the Sweet 16, other programs that have made runs in there. And then baseball, of course, is under way over there in the Southeastern Conference. Chris Lee and Blake Love will have you all covered for that. So if you want that coverage, subscribe, like, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. But I cover SEC football even during the offseason right here. And we've been diving into some certain teams. We looked at Alabama quarterback battle. We've looked at Missouri and what they could look like this year, Kentucky as well, South Carolina, the expectations for them. But now we stay in the SEC East, and we're going to look at the Florida Gators and the expectations for Billy Napier's squad. Listen, the season did not go the way that they hoped it would, okay? The losses at the end of the year there, of course, losing a rivalry game to Florida State. Everybody knows how much roster turnover they had and holdouts and all that stuff before the Oregon State game. So, you got to take that one with a grain of salt a little bit, but still kind of a black eye to the schedule there when you lose a game like that to a Pac-12 team if you're an SEC team. Now, listen, Oregon State was a good squad and had a good defense, plays well for Coach Smith out there in Corvallis, but still – not a game that you would really expect. And then the Vanderbilt loss that was before Florida State, that's just a tough one to take if you're a Florida fan. So the question is, what are the expectations, coming into the 2023 season? Florida has issues up front in terms of continuity, right? They're returning only one of their 5 offensive line starters. That's Kingsley Aguakon at center. They're losing Cyrus O'Torrance, All-American guard for him that came with Billy Napier from Louisiana Lafayette. He's going to go into the NFL. Of course, they're able to bring in a lot of transfers as well. Okay, so talented guys, just guys that, if you're in the transfer portal, one, you got to ask why you're in the transfer portal. Two, how well can you mesh on that offensive line? Now, if there's one thing that you got to give Rob Sale credit for, Darnell Stapleton credit for, is Florida found a way, even with other issues that they had, maybe even issues in the passing game, which is kind of ironic because Anthony Richardson is being talked about being a top 10 pick. But I digress. Even with issues in the passing game last year, Florida was able to run the football. Etienne, Montrell Johnson, those guys could run the football well, and that's because they had those guys on the offensive line that were able to kind of make way for the Gators up front. And guys like Etienne did a good job of breaking tackles when at the line of scrimmage, and then also just being able to find small creases. And I was really impressed with Etienne as a freshman and how he ran in the SEC, especially. That's not a league where, a lot of times freshman running backs have a lot of success, and that was a bright spot for Florida there. And I think that he's going to be a bright spot going forward for Florida. But it's going to be guys like Damian George coming in from Alabama, Kenyatta Goodwin, who was one of the highest rated recruits ever for Kentucky, but he leaves Kentucky, comes down to Florida, and then Makai Makuza, who transfers in from Baylor. These are all big guys who have the talent for sure, but now is okay, coming all together, learning a new system. But they're there for the spring, so that should be good. Graham Mertz comes in. Him and Jack Miller are going to be competing for the quarterback spot. Listen, I don't think, Florida fans, if you just, injected them with some truth serum, I don't think they're superly excited about the prospects at quarterback with Jack Miller, not having played much at all last year. And then, of course, Graham Mertz, who has not had a great amount of success Wisconsin and Paul Chryst when he was up there. But sometimes guys just need a change of scenery, right? You come down and you're able to work with a guy like Billy Napier. He's done good things in the past with his quarterbacks. He's a good offensive mind. So maybe that's just a spark that Graham Mertz needs in his career. By all accounts, he's looked pretty good for Florida in spring ball. So we'll see how he handles things. I do anticipate that Graham Mertz will win that starting job. And the question is, weapons wise on the outside, who's going to step up? Because they do return guys like Ricky Pearsall, who was their leading receiver. They return Xavier Henderson. They do lose Justin Shorter, who's gone to the NFL. But outside of Pearsall and Henderson, who's going to step up? I mean, and the question is, is it going to be one of these talented freshmen, whether it's Eugene Wilson out of Tampa? The Florida Gators held a trio of wide receivers in the state, highly rated guys, in Eugene Wilson, Aiden Mizell, and Andy Jean. Aiden Mizell is a guy who can really run, 6'2" frame. Andy Jean also 6'2", getting up close to 200 pounds over there. So these are guys who are already, there, that are working with the team and getting that rapport with Graham Mertz. So that would be big over there. They've got a guy in Trayon Webb that they brought in this class who really is kind of a jack of all trades type running back. He can line up and play receiver quite well if they want to go empty and things like that. But, a lot of the Gators offense last year, I felt at best, the best times it had was when Anthony Richardson kind of took things into his own hands and made some off-schedule plays. Can that offensive line gel enough to give Graham Mertz time to find these guys? Because Graham Mertz isn't a guy who's going to wow you with his speed and things like that. But it'll be interesting to see how things play out there. The biggest deal for Florida is going to be defensively. In terms of being able to stop the run. I don't care what it is, whether it's Watson in the middle, whether it's Shamar James really turning the corner and becoming a big leader for that defense. All of that stuff is fine and well, and the personnel, I'm sure Florida is going through and seeing, okay, they're at about 84 guys scholarship wise. So do they need to address more in the portal? Do they need to bring guys in the spring signing class? Whatever, all of that kind of stuff. But the main thing is, at the end of the day, Billy Napier and Austin Armstrong, who's coming in for Florida as the defensive coordinator, has to find ways to make sure that Florida is not getting gashed in the run game, because they did last year. Typically don't see a Florida defense get ran on like that. In the 13 games for Florida, 11 of the teams that they faced ran for over 100 yards in a game, and 10 of them ran for over 150, including Eastern Washington. I know they blew out Eastern Washington, but you're just allowing rushing yards that good defenses in the SEC do not allow. You talk about the historical, Alabama defenses, Georgia defenses, things like that. There's a standard, right? There's an expectation and a standard of where you want to get to. If you're the Florida program, you should believe that you should be competing for championships year in and year out. But there's two things that I think you have to be able to do. You have to run the football well. I think Florida will be able to do that, but their problem was they didn't have the passing game to complement it. And then two, you have to be able to stop the run, and Florida could not do that when they needed to, especially, like I said, the Georgia game, the Utah game that, they ended up winning that game. But now you got to go on the road to Utah to start off the year, and you got Cameron Rising coming back, and it's going to be a interesting time. Can Florida stop the run in that game? Of course, Tennessee was able to run, and a lot of that was quarterback run with Hendon Hooker last year. So I think Florida's got to get more consistent up front. That front seven got to find ways to consistently make teams one-dimensional. Say, okay, you're not going to run the football on us. Let's see how we can hold up on the back end, Corey Redmond's defensive backs, things of that nature. So Florida this year, their schedule, okay, like I said, they got to go to Utah tough game. They do get Tennessee at home. They get a couple cupcakes mixed in there. McNeese State, Charlotte should take care of business in those. Tough road games. Okay, they got some tough road games this year at Kentucky on September 30th, at South Carolina October 14th. They've got to go to Missouri on November 18th. One of the better teams, I think, this year in the SEC in terms of the way they're trending. They have so many guys returning on defense. Tyron Hopper, Enos Rakestraw, a lot of excitement about what that defense can do for Blake Baker and Eli Drinkwitz up there. Then the home games, of course, they get Vanderbilt at home. They're going to try to get a retribution for that loss last year. They're going to get Arkansas at home. And then I forgot to mention they do have to go on the road to LSU. My goodness, I think LSU, as you know, you can see their helmet over here behind me. I think LSU is going to be one of the best teams in the league. I think they got a real good shot of being the West representative again, and it's always an interesting matchup here. The last matchup of that crossover game annually, because I don't think Florida and LSU are going to end up in the same, whether you want to call it pod or group of permanent 3 opponents. So guys, it's going to be tough sledding. I think if Florida can find a way to get more consistent up front, stopping the run, Graham Mertz maybe just not turn the ball over as much as he did at Wisconsin, find some more consistency. If he can gel with Ricky Pearsall, if one of those freshmen can really step up on the outside and become a weapon, whether it's Andy Jean or Aiden Mizell or Eugene Wilson, whichever one. But Billy Napier's got to find a way to manufacture some success this year, because I just don't think Florida faithful is going to be as patient as maybe they would have been about midway through the year last year, because things took a turn for the worse. You go out there to Salt Lake City and lose to Utah to start off the year, especially if there's issues with stopping the run. Once again, I think that could be tough. Listen, you got to find a way to win those games at home against Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Arkansas, because I think those games on the road, Kentucky, South Carolina, Missouri, and LSU, are brutal this year. We'll see how that goes. And Florida State is loaded for bear. I think, realistically, if Billy Napier could go 8-4 this year, he would be like coach of the year type material for Florida. I really think Florida is projected to be at the very bottom of the SEC East. I think realistically, 5-6 wins is kind of what you're looking at for Florida this year. So give me your comments. We'd love to hear what you think about the Gators in 2023. And we'll see how things play out for Billy Ball in year number 2 down there in Gainesville. I'm Blayne Gilmer. This is Southeastern 14. We'll catch you guys next time.